right, folks are still jumping on, but I just wanted to say hello and thank you again for taking time to learn more about the League of Women Voters and how you can be an active member or leader. We had a couple hours ago, we had one on Leadership 101. So my my call out to those of you who were on that one, there is a lot of overlap. But again, as we say, sometimes repetition helps us build a skill here. So today we're really wanting to focus a little more deeply on some of just the some of the basic questions that people have about being a league member. And some of you might be on too, because you have to figure out how to communicate this stuff to your own members, which is also a great reason for being here and learning how to pass this information along to your members as a whole. So I've still got people streaming in, so let's take one more minute and then we'll get started. Get my screen going. So as we're together today, when I am screen sharing, I can only see a couple of you and can't see hands raised real easily. So if you would put questions or comments in the chat, that would be great. And we'll have some natural breaks for questions, but you can also kind of keep them going in the chat. It's been nice because sometimes people ask questions and some of our league members who know the answers answer it in the chat. I think that's wonderful. And really, at the end of the day, that's what we want to do with these Jumpstarts or with these sessions, these webinars, is to encourage networking among all of you out there in the trenches. So let me just start by saying to how excited I am about every time we do these and we hear from local leagues. I'm even more proud of the League of Women Voters when you see the kind of impact that people could be heading out on vacation, but here we all are working on democracy and important key issues. And I just can't thank you enough. And I'm so proud of the league when we all get together and share our good work. So, all right, well, I'll get started. Again, I'm Michelle Witte. I'm the executive director for the State League, and we have about 35 local leagues, and we're part of 50 states. All 50 states have a league, and hopefully our 51st state, hopefully DC will win their statehood, but they also have a league. And our League of Women Voters US is our kind of our mothership out there. So it's fun to be a part of such a broad organization. Our January Jumpstart is designed to do that, just jumpstart people on all the things that are coming our way here as we enter a new year. And what I want to do is take an opportunity now to sort of walk you through what we have in our member handbook. And that is all of our wonderful things. We just started our member handbook, actually, sorry, this jumps around, last year, of sort of who are we, what do we do, and how do we do it? So we kind of focused a lot in our leadership about how we do things. We're going to go back to the beginning now. Who are we again, and what are we doing? In answering some of those complex questions that often come up for folks. And so I am going to start a little bit by showing you on our member resources page. And I like to click around because I basically want to show you that everything I'm showing you today is available on our website. So I kind of like to show in real time how we're finding things. But under member resources, we have a kind of alphabetical league admin here. We have our league member handbook. And I want to just digress for 1 minute and say this too. One of the things we found is so helpful about putting things on the web is that we have probably like 6 different league handbooks in paper form floating around our office. And those things change, right? Things, we get new information, things get updated. And it's so nice that we can just put things on our website and update in real time. And we just did that between the last session. So in the last session, someone asked about being a roster manager. And they're like, where is that roster manager portal? And who do I go to for support? Well, we just added that. So now we have roster management right here. And that is a nice thing about having everything on the web so we can keep it great. Now, all of these things you can still print out. Any of these things you can cut and paste and print out and make into your own. But we're going to walk through just a little bit about some of these big purposes. And what is nice here is in the last, really, it was only about 3 years ago when the League of Women Voters US adopted a sort of a new updated mission, vision, and value statement. And the vision is really something that I really want to point out because I use this a lot now to describe who we are. You know, our mission, empowering voters, defending democracy, is really great. It's just to the point. But I love the vision. So why are we empowering voters? Why are we defending democracy? The vision being, we envision a democracy where every person has the desire, the right, the knowledge, and the confidence to participate. And that sets up really some additional standards for us. It's really great to have voting rights, but how do we help people have the knowledge about who to vote for, where to vote, or to feel confident that they have the information, that they understand the system, or even sometimes harder yet, the desire to say, you know what, I don't know if I want to participate in this. We have to do all these things. It's not just enough to register voters, but we need to help people keep their rights and to have the desire and willingness to participate. And that can be more difficult these days because just talking about voting and democracy have been sort of tough words for people. So we'll hit on that. I did want to bring up this issue of our value. This has been a little controversial sometimes in the league, right? We believe in the power of women to create a more perfect democracy. And so some of the conversation there has been what we're open to men and what about other genders? And so it's been where this came from was really the understanding that we are a 102-year-old organization. And it's somewhat like, I find the best way to explain it is with the NAACP, you know, the National Association of the Advancement of Colored People. We don't talk about colored people anymore, but we maintain that heritage and that link to everything we do. And that is what I think the league is really trying to do by keeping women in this. This is, we still are also not there, right? We had a wonderful lunch and learn on the ERA amendment. Women still lag. We lag in participation on all levels of democracy in terms of percent of being represented in democracy. So we still have a place to go, but sometimes that gives us some, people talk about that and it's worth talking about. So this is a really great place if people are like, well, what do you stand for? It's really nicely organized here in this chapter, which I really like. We're going to spend a little bit of time on the nonpartisanship issue, which is something we continually, it's growing, it's a growing challenge, right? To talk about what it means to be nonpartisan. But it is the easy way to say we are nonpartisan is we do not endorse candidates and we do not endorse parties. That's the simple version of it. So the reverse would be true. We do not take actions because of people's political party. We don't use party as a construct for how we shape our positions or our action. And I want to just give some real world thoughts here about that, because this has been a real challenge lately, right? And we're in a very hyper partisan time. And I want to also pull up on we have a really wonderful slideshow that the League of Women Voters US did for council last year on remaining nonpartisan in hyperpartisan times. This is in our member handbook under League Admin. I'm going to scroll. Sorry, I'm going to move a little quickly. I know it can be a little much here. It's like someone with the cable remote, right? It's not you. But I want to use their slide deck because I think it's just really hits on what we want to talk about and see here today. That being nonpartisan does not mean being non-political. Being political is what we do all the time. It means we are involved in government, we're involved in decisions, we're involved in advocacy. Issues are not partisan. Democracy is not partisan. Facts are not partisan. And so we try to, as they say, lean into what is good for voters. So here's a couple of interesting things I'd like to talk about. One was on January 6th, when the insurrection happened, the League of Women Voters Minnesota put together a comprehensive letter. It was after the January 6th, I should say. After that happened, we had 14 state senators from Minnesota who had written a letter to the Attorney General in Texas asking to be part of their lawsuit to help overturn election results. Their letter contained a lot of, just basic, they were lies. They were not true. And so these were the things we pointed out. We pointed out who signed the letters. Now, the letters were or the people who signed the letters were all Republican senators, or actually representatives as well in Minnesota. So people said, well, aren't you being partisan? And we're saying, no. I mean, if a Democrat had signed that, we would have called that out too. We are standing by our issue of free and fair elections. And so just because sometimes it's only one party that does something doesn't mean that you should also not take action just because it's a party, right? So we're not going to not take action either on things that are important to our issues and positions just because only one party is for it or against it. That would be partisan. If we had said, wow, we have 12 delegates of the Minnesota legislature who are calling for the overturn of free and fair elections, and we had not called them out because they're Republicans and we don't want to look partisan, that would have been partisan. Do you see what I'm saying? And I think it kind of helps to explain some of those nuances because I know they can be difficult. I also want to bring up another issue. So we also signed on to the Walls Climate Report Card as part of our climate change work and action. And we also got a lot of calls. So that action was really showing or talking to the governor about what we thought was going well and not going well and what advocacy we wanted. So we had a variety of people saying to us, well, what are you criticizing the governor for? And I'm like, well, he's the governor. I mean, we have issues with the governor. So there's sometimes people will think that we lean more Democratic. Then they're wondering, why are we criticizing a Democrat? Or why are we criticizing someone who agrees on lots of things that we agree on? Well, we don't all agree on everything. Again, we don't make that decision based on our partisan basis. Now, I want to point out the nuance and the difference here is that when you go into some of the do's and don'ts, this is a really critical one right here. We say we don't directly agree with or oppose candidates or parties. And it talks about candidates are different from elected officials. Timing matters. And this is really critical in understanding how this works in that, you know, Governor Walz is our governor. That means he's not a candidate. He's our governor. We lobby our elected officials. If Governor Walz files for governor, and all the governors will file, and those will go in June, and those filings will close in June of 2022, then we would not be so forceful in our critique of the governor at that point. This is always an issue with the Secretary of State as well. The Secretary of State has a constitutional job to do, but once they're a declared candidate running in a race, we do have a higher standard we set by. So for example, Secretary Simon often will do a tour of counties and partner with local leagues during the summer. But when he's a candidate, we tell our local leagues, you really can't host that, because he as an incumbent has an advantage. It can look like we are endorsing him as a candidate, even though he's just doing his job, right? So that's why it sort of matters when you think about when and how we participate with people on partisan issues. There's a lot of, well, it depends. And that seems frustrating. But that is, again, why we have a lot of these guides on our website. We have great tools. I think these are under advocacy, of how to stay nonpartisan during advocacy and how to pick coalitions and partnerships. So that's a lot on nonpartisanship, but it's really our number one question that we get has to do with that. And I hope that in-depth explanation is helpful. Any questions before we move on? That's a good one. If you can put them in chat, because I can't see you otherwise. Okay, so moving along, the other, let's see, go back here. So this is a great slide deck. Now, the other lens that we use for our work, and we say lens because it's something we want to apply to everything that we do, is our commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And we have here what our commitment is, and we have a lot of good stuff that's great to read here, and a lot of good sources and where it comes from. Again, one of the things, we also have a link again to these great resources put together for us from LWV US. And I really like this first, I mean, I really want to put this on my wall. This is a really great way of just determining a lens. When we think of diversity, equity, and inclusion, we're like, well, what does that really mean? What does that really look like? These are great questions that really form how to put this into practice. Well, who's involved in the process, right? If we have something happening and we're making plans for people, are those people at the table? You know, who's at the table? Who's missing at the table? Who will be impacted by the actions or the things we're doing? What are the intended, unintended outcomes? Does this align with our vision for an equitable and inclusive organization? What changes can be made to make this more equitable? And so using that lens does help you to decide to maybe look at things differently. And I want to give a good example of this. Trying to give real world examples because these come up in our world all the time. We are the #1 organization selected by the court to register to vote newly naturalized citizens. We have been doing this for 15, 20 years. And we have volunteers that go and register new citizens. It's a wonderful experience. People love to do it. And we get a lot of great feedback too from people of color that it's nice to see sometimes the majority group there, so they feel they're represented and welcomed. But we've had what we are looking at when we use this lens, we're asking ourselves, because we've had a variety of groups. We had a group called Black Votes Matter that wanted to partner with us on doing the naturalization ceremonies. And we really have had to, say, well, it's true, we've been doing it and we love to do it because our volunteers love to do it and we feel good by doing it. But we also are like, have to use this lens and go, well, who's involved in the process? Who's missing at the table? What we realize is that as strong as our naturalization ceremonies are, we're serving and representing all these great people of color coming into our country, but they're not here at our table registering voters. And so it really calls out to us Well, that's really what can we do with that? So we're trying to work with more partners to bring more people to that table, quite literally the registration table, to be able to be a representative of the league or just of America in this case. And that's an example, again, not that anyone's doing anything wrong. We haven't excluded people. We're very open to people coming and being with us. But sometimes you have to go that extra mile to use this lens and say, what changes can we make to make this more equitable? So this is a great tool, I think, in trying to think of what DEI really means as we go to live it out. All right. So those are a lot of the big questions. The other big one is, what is up with all these issues? You guys have so many positions, people will say. Where does all that come from? Well, it's really fabulous. I just adored learning about the history of the League of Women Voters, because it is the representation that women fought for the right to vote, not for the privilege of voting, but for the change they could make once the vote was secured. There was a conscious effort on the suffragists' part to disband the suffrage organizations and create the League of Women Voters as the organization to then help women go out there and make a difference in the world. That's why we want the vote. What are we going to do with it? That's the real question. And so from that, the League, it's really, when you look through the archives and imagine these people coming together to have these really wonderful conversations, what are our principles? These are really great right now to take another look, because after January 6th, you are kind of asked, you sort of say, well, wait a minute, what's a democracy? I thought I knew what democracy was, right? You almost have to revisit it. What are these principles? And so I have just kind of reread these several times of what we believe. And it is, these were done originally in 1920, and we expand on them then through what we call our program for action. And our program for action really is all our positions. Since the beginning, we have so many issues. And what that means is League members have come together and said, you know what, this is really important as something that connects to our principles. And they study it. We study it. We still have studies today. We're in the middle of updating our firearms safety study. Local leagues are doing studies. The LWV US did a big study and updated their environmental policy to include climate change, because needs change, right? The world changes, information changes. This is the list of all of the different positions we have that are out there. Now, what's interesting is what's in front of us right now. When you look at these positions, we have positions on healthcare, very few positions on healthcare, but they're there. But what isn't there is end of life. Medical aid in dying. This is a new position that we had a variety of, or a group of league members look at the Utah League. We can do what's called a concurrence, where we look at a position that's been studied and voted on by members of other leagues, and we can come forward and say, we want our state league of Minnesota to concur, in this case with the League of Utah, on the issue of providing extended medical aid in dying, or to be more involved in end-of-life planning. And the league members who worked on this have done a phenomenal job of researching this and really bringing this issue to life. And in doing so, and that would be a new issue. We do not have a position right now on that. So it would be a new position. And what our positions allow us to do, like, why do we have these principles? Why do we have these positions? We have them so that we can advocate on them. So when people will say, hey, League of Women Voters, we want you to come to the Capitol and take a position with us on medical aid in dying, right now, we would say we can't, because we don't have a position that our league membership has all agreed to that we can act on. There's very few things we can't act on, as you can see. I mean, I think this goes how many pages? It's a very long document of things we believe in and care about. So there's a lot we can do, but we are still growing because there will always be issues to work on, right? So that's, to me, a real exciting part of League, is the opportunity to shape debate, conversation about all these wonderful issues. All right. Any questions so far? I've hit you guys with, this is all the big stuff, right? We're just going right to the heart of it. But these are really our biggest questions we get are what the nonpartisanship. Sorry, my little thing's going all over here. Diversity, equity, and inclusion, and our issues. Just really quickly, I want to also talk about in the Who We Are. I talked about the national, statewide, and local structure, and it's really exciting to be part of something like that. But we also have what I really like, the League lingo. So you hear a lot of League people will talk about things. You're like, what are they talking about? What is this concurrence and consensus and member at large and PMP? And so the League lingo is all here, which is really fun too. We also work with what we call interleague organizations. And one of our Council of Metropolitan Area Leagues is an older one. It's wonderful, really. This Council of Metropolitan Area Leagues really is credited from being one of the big organizations to help bring about and recommend the Met Council back in the day. It's a wonderful group that still meets. Anyone can be a part of it if you're a member of a league. It's just, it's a kind of a gathering of those leagues that are in the metropolitan area. We also have our Upper Mississippi River region, and that is an ILO, as we call, between 4 states that all share proximity or are affected by the Upper Mississippi River. So yeah, so that's good. And I want to answer this question here. So let's see, we'll come back at that one. So anyway, it's really fun that we have all these different relationships. Now, somebody just asked me a great question, which is, it's great we have all these positions, but what if we have league members that don't agree with those positions? And I love that question, because I always will say, let's see, how many of you agree with everything in your family? All your family agree on everything. How many of you are part of a workplace where everyone agrees on everything? How many of you are part of a religious group that agrees on everything? The bottom line is we don't agree on everything. And sometimes we agree to disagree, but we decide in the League of Women Voters, one of the principles really is that we really do use civil discourse, and we work hard on things we care about. And sometimes the issues we care about don't come to pass, and sometimes they do. But what do? Do we take our ball and go home? And this is a big thing I say to young people a lot, because we have very low voter turnout among young people. Even in Minnesota, where we had a high voter turnout of over 80%, almost 80% in the presidential election, youth were at 60%. And because a lot of times people will say, well, my candidate wasn't the best, or I don't find a candidate I don't like. And I'm like, you know what? We're never going to always have everyone we like for everything. But the point is, in a democracy, we have a lot of differences. And the value is learning how to live with our differences. So it's perfectly fine to say, if you were to say, gosh, I'm trying to think of a good example. I work at a certain corporation, and, I love the product I make, the thing I do, but I don't agree with everything they do. We don't say, well, I'm going to quit and I'm done, So I urge you to think about that and have those conversations when people are like, well, these positions. Now, sometimes obviously you wouldn't join an organization for which you really felt like the issues did not represent you. I mean, there's no doubt about that. But an example would be, we are, as a position, we have a very old position for us, again, not a partisan issue, but we do have a position of reproductive rights for women. So, that if people are looking at only that lens, they wouldn't pick the league. So there are those things that exist, like any organization, but I think it's a great conversation to have. You're asking too, is there a condensed handbook that can be printed for new members? Right now, we are actually just onboarding all our new interns, and one of our new interns' first thing is putting together exactly that. We don't have a real condensed version right now. So we're working on that, just to let you know. There's a lot, we just kind of got all the information together last year from all our various sources. And so now we're doing some consolidation. So we will have that out there for you. Sorry to scroll around here. I'm going to go back to the handbook. Okay. So get to my member resources. So these again are the big areas that people ask us about on a regular basis. Speaking with one voice is another big thing for us, which is really important during our legislature. So being part of sort of a federated organization, it really breaks down in such a way that, let's say you're in a local league. I for example, belong to my local league of Woodbury Cottage Grove area. And I really care. I'm really passionate about, the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. And I want to take a stand on that and advocate on that. Any person in the league at any time can and should take action on any issue they want, because we are voters and citizens first. But when you bring the league into it, if I, the league, want to say Woodbury Cottage Grove Area League, and I want to go direct to Amy Klobuchar with a position, that's what I wouldn't do, because it's a federal position. And so we work through our LWV US on federal issues, and we work through on state issues, we work through LWVMN. And then on local issues, of course, as local leagues, you all, are empowered to take action on your own in your own community as you see fit. So it's a good distinction, because now, as the legislature is about to start, we've asked if anybody's interested in lobbying on a state legislative bill or issue, they need to work through us in the lobby corps. And that isn't so much the issue of trying to control people. It's really trying to maximize efficiency. And it really helps when you think about the fact that we're 102 years old. I am also, it's a great model, because it also lets everyone kind of be successful at the levels they're at. So when we talk about speaking with one voice, we oftentimes the challenge we have is we'll get local members who want their local league to advocate directly at the Capitol for a state bill. You just need to ping us. You need to be involved with us so that we can best coordinate our activities. We may be working with a legislator on a key issue, and it just doesn't look good, right? Imagine if I was a legislator and all 35 leagues came to me individually, and I'd be like, what are you doing? So you're trying to coordinate that response. But I want to, again, differentiate that all members, everyone exists. We want people to be voters, and they're going to make partisan choices. And we want you to be able to still be involved in your local political scene, just as you, not as the league. Does that make sense? Because I know a lot of times where people are like, well, another big question will be, can I put a lawn sign in my yard for a candidate? That's probably our other big question when it comes to voter service time. And we will always say, you're always a voter first and should be able to express your rights. But if you are on the leadership team, if you're the head of voter service and you're doing candidate forums and you have one of the candidates' lawn signs in your lawn, yeah, no, that's not good, right? So it's a lot of it is just common sense at the leadership level, that if you're going to take a leadership level, we do ask that people during voter service season keep a stricter nonpartisan take. And to be honest, there's been a lot of people I know who've said, well, I don't want to be a leader then because I really want to support my candidate as their campaign manager or their treasurer, or I want to be a big fundraiser for them. And sometimes people will just step down for that period of time. We have a lot of league members that step in and out, like Kim Norton, who was the president of the league in Rochester and then became the mayor of Rochester. And so, while she was running for mayor, even though it was a nonpartisan position, she stepped back. She wasn't president of the league while running for the mayor of Rochester. So those are other options, kind of common sense to think about. All right. How are you doing? Any big questions? I'm not seeing, I think we're doing all right. Okay. So I'm going to kind of go a little bit faster here, and then we'll have a chance for a little more dialogue. But again, in the member handbook, those are really a lot of the big ones. What we do is all in here. Most of you know more about the things we do than why it is we do them and some of the challenges. So I wanted to spend time there. So I really encourage you to also just start clicking down these things. These all open up. It's really good information for you. Okay. Next is, I'm so sorry about my little jumpy thing here. Member resources as a whole. Again, all of these things I'm pulling from are at our website, lwvmn.org/member resources. This is where, again, we put all kinds of stuff. And the one thing I really want to point out here, normally if you're looking for something, I'd start here. It'd be like, is it here? And you can also go to our website and scroll at the top. But we try to put everything here that anyone has asked us for. If people are like, hey, where's this? Hey, where's that? So another example would be our voter service handbook. Our voter service materials until last year were all kind of clunky in folders in the Google Drive. Now we have just a ton of good information about how to stay nonpartisan, how to build, basically how to do voter registration, all kinds of great stuff on voter service that it used to be available just for our voter service chairs is now available for everybody, which is really a great thing. The other thing I'm really excited about always is our newsletter. And unfortunately, I think, being what it is, things might go to spam. We do get over a 50% open rate on our email news, which is great. But I do want to point out that on the second Monday of every month, religiously, since I was been here for 5 years, the second Monday of every month, you will get an all member news. And that's where we put in basically, what we're doing, what we're up to, but we also like to feature the work you're doing. We like to hear from local leagues. We like to hear from local members. We try to put as much in here that's relevant as possible. It's a great place to go for information of all kinds. And so, sadly, we try to keep up with members we've lost. We just put a lot in here. And if you'll notice, we keep, we try to keep a solid year, 2 years of them here. So we keep them up. It's a great way to see what's going on with the league. So there's just a lot of resources on here right now, a lot of great resources that we pointed out in our last session have to do, sorry for all the fast scrolling, you guys, advocacy and action. We have our caucus resolutions here. If you all are going to caucus and want some draft caucus resolutions for precinct caucuses, we have those here as well. All right. So The other way to stay current, we just talked about all member news, but another one is our Minnesota voter blog. Again, here's our main website. Here, all of these are drop-down menus, so you can kind of quickly find your way through. But our Minnesota voter blog is where we put like all things that, like all our press releases that we release, all the kind of big news of the day are here, and we keep those posted for a long time. So it's a great way you can keep going and going to find out if you're like, gosh, I missed, didn't the league send something out about that? You'll find it here. We also love to brag on all of you. We do put in our press coverage anything local leagues will send us. There's actually a link on member resources for any league member to send us news relevant to their local league, because there's so much good stuff coming, that you all are doing. We put that on the website. So these are great ways to stay current. Our events calendar is a great way. Anything can go on here related to league. So it's a great place to look for things because so many things are on Zoom. It's also just a great way to, hey, I kind of like to look at this or that. So you can tell us what things you want on the calendar, and it's a great place to watch. And so we're going to end really quickly and then open it up again with what's really current next is session. So our legislative session begins on Monday, and we are gearing up. And we have 3 big legislative priorities that have been determined both by US and by the state board, which are the following. Democracy, of course, democracy being all things voting rights and elections. The big thing we'll say about democracy is probably what we've had the last 2 years. The good news is nothing bad's probably going to happen, and the bad news is nothing good's probably going to happen, because not much is going to happen, because we are the only state in the country that has a divided legislature, and that divided legislature has created a lot of gridlock for us. So on the good side, we are able to prevent what seems to be anti or voting suppression bills coming forward each year. But we have not been able to move forward very few of our advancements that we would like as well. We will be working more, though, this year also on safe and secure elections and protecting our election officials and the integrity of our voting system with regards to telling the truth about how our elections work. That will be new work for us this year. The second one is climate change. People, what does climate change have to do with democracy? Again, climate change, things that are really important to how we live and to equality. The intersection between democracy, climate change, and racial justice is really coming together more and more. But again, all of these issues beyond democracy really are brought forward because of our members. So climate change is a direct result. We have a climate change task force because members are really interested in this. Again, remember, I have the original program of the original legislative activities from 1920. And they were social hygiene was a big one. The status of women, it's just amazing. But again, from the very beginning, we're not just interested in one thing. We're interested in creating a democracy again, where everyone has not just the right, but the desire, right, as well, and the ability to vote. And that means having all these other things happening in our society. But again, climate change and racial justice will only move forward from the league standpoint with help from our league members. So we have a lot of league members who really care about climate change and racial justice and will be on our lobbying team this year. There are also, again, other issues. The ERA is, we have people lobbying on behalf of the league for that, as well as for civics education. So if there are issues you're passionate about and we have a position on, we really welcome people to be involved with us through the Lobby Corps. We'll be meeting every Monday from 11:30 to 12:30 to do planning, and it's exciting. We talked already about speaking with one voice. And we talked a little bit about this, but this is a nice little graphic again. As we go forward. Well, a lot of times people will say, why isn't the league taking action on this? And we're like, well, this is kind of how it works. But again, because we are looking at some new positions that are coming through, we wanted to explain again this whole idea of how the league takes action. Convention is our big year, and that will be in 2023. And 2022 is our council. We don't take recommendations, but people can bring program changes directly to the members, and if they get 2/3 of a vote to the delegates, those can go forward. So if you're interested in program updating and changing, that can still happen for you during council. And lastly, I think I've ended all my presentations on what we're really excited about too is voting Violet. If you haven't met her, she will be our new mascot to go out in the community and spread the word about our nonpartisan and one-stop shop for voting information, vote411.org. We are really going to be investing in vote411.org, both in terms of really helping candidates to get their information in it, as well as communities to use it as a tool, because it is one-stop shop. It links to the Secretary of State's site for all of the voting information, but also does a great job of giving people information about candidates. We're excited about our partnerships within various communities of color, because what we really want is various cultural groups to help us reach out to candidates in their cultural groups to remind them, if they're a candidate, to get them in our voting guide, because that's, people have to, there's a lot of competition, right? For people, once you're a candidate, people want you to know your opinion on lots of things. And ours is really kind of one of the few voting guides still that actually goes all the way down to the local level, and that asks questions of most concern to the voters, not necessarily single issue, or we'd say gotcha questions. Cindy Olson, yeah. So it'd be wonderful if we could get a stuffy toy of Velvet to put on our tables. We'll see how far Violet goes. But on the serious side, the other reason we are doing this is we are seeing more of our leagues, even seeing some harassment at voting tables. And we do anticipate that the sort of general sentiment around just registering voters and talking about voting could have a negative spin on it. And so we thought, what's better than a mascot to go out there, maybe throw the first pitch Saints game and promote voting as, just as pure as baseball and apple pie, right? So we are going to give this a shot to be able to also be more visible with when we went to Juneteenth, for example, we went to a great Juneteenth event last year, and there was, you realize when you just have a table and you're standing there, you're just not as exciting. Come on, and unless you have a mascot with you. So it will be an interesting way for us to get the word out about League. So I want to end up with just a chance too for any of you to ask any questions. I'll stop sharing my screen so I can see you, so you can raise your hands. If there are ideas you have, things you wish the League would do better at, how we could better serve you, I would love to hear from you, or any of those tough questions. You can raise your hand if you have your camera on, because I think I can see everybody, or you can raise it using the reactions as well. Any questions, any ideas about League in general? Like, gosh, I really wish you would. We usually have lots of people who have ideas for us, but we also just really want people to not get despondent right now, right? If you take that historical lens and go, oh my gosh, what's going on right now? I always like to imagine Dolly Madison running out of the White House as it was burning with precious pictures. All of that to say, we have come a long way. Democracy's withstood a lot, but I'm especially proud for the work we do at the local level. It's going to be critical now, right? At our county levels, We, in addition to the maps, the other big current thing is, we've been very involved in redistricting. We're in one of the lead lawsuits that's before the court and have had a really great opportunity to help shape some of the maps that are coming out. We feel really good about the decisions we think our court will make. We'll see. But unfortunately, the court will have to make them as the legislature is not up to the task again. But what happens is once the maps have to be released on February 15th, then there's a real opportunity at the local level again, because once those new maps, new districts are drawn, we have to draw new precinct boundaries. So this is a great time for anyone to ask their city clerks, hey, what's the plan for drawing precincts? Because all those precincts need to be redrawn by March 29th. It's a very short window. And it is a real opportunity in an area. If somebody wanted to suppress the vote, they could say, you used to have 10 precincts, or, we're going to go down to 1. I mean, that can happen. There is no limit. There is no legal statute in place to protect that from happening. Now, we don't expect it to happen rampantly in Minnesota, but it is something we will be asking all of our local leagues to keep an eye on. It's why we're keeping in touch with our county election officials. And it's a really good time to pay attention to what's happening at the local level to make sure that we retain strong precincts with locations that can accommodate voters. Versus, hey, we're going to have 10,000 voters try to squish into one, small school on a certain day, for example. So we'll have some more resources out about that, but it's something to think about. Okay, so yeah, Mary Kay, Carl.
Yeah, I'm calling from St. Cloud, and we are thinking about using this League 101 as an orientation for some of our new members. Would you suggest that that's going to be a pretty good review of what League is all about, a good introduction to League? And that I noticed that you were recording,
Yes.
And that this would be available to us so that we could have our new members watch this?
Right, absolutely. And what you can do too is, with any recording, you don't have to show the whole thing, you can also just say, I know a lot of you are asking about nonpartisanship. Well, here's what the executive director has, there's nothing wrong with that. We are also hoping to do some more new member materials with our interns. So we hope to have some of that. And I'm glad you mentioned that, Mary Kay, as a reminder that even some of the answers I've given, maybe we could give in snippets, right? So that you could put it together as a program. That might be a nice way to organize that. But absolutely use these. We have, in addition to all of the webinars that have been done for the January Jumpstart and that were part of August Academy, plus all the slide decks are all available on the website. The January Jumpstart ones will be available probably early next week. And they're all under events and past events. And you can definitely look at them, use them. You can, what's great with the YouTube video is just kind of mark what sections you want to show people. It's sometimes hard to do new member orientation from the state level because local leagues have their own flair, right? Which is great. And we encourage that, but we will be also starting what we call a new member monthly. We'll be starting, we're going to introduce it at council. So the second Monday of every month, we issue our all member news. That evening, we're also going to do a new member orientation, so to speak. What it would be is 30 minutes for brand new members who want to learn this information. So that's probably where I can help crystallize that. Basically not wanting to supersede any orientation you all do, but we would talk again about US and national, kind of like we did today. You can still have your own local orientation about the things you're doing locally and how you're organized. But these big issues of nonpartisanship and who we are and why we are who we are, we will have that every month available. And then the last 30 minutes will be general to any member who has any question at all. We might have some topics that we cover. We also want to have that time because we do anticipate that there might be some more breaking news issues where we need to get together. During COVID that happened, and it was nice to have a time where we're like, I'm just going to be here for you. If you have a question, come and, the second Monday of every month will be there. So more to come, Mary Kay. That doesn't help you right now, but we are anticipating rolling that out as part of council. And so certainly by summer, we should be ready with those. Great question. All right. Well, thank you all so much. Anything else before we go? Yeah.
I have one quick thing. You said there was a YouTube video. What is that?
Well, these are all of these videos we put on our YouTube channel. So that's what I'm saying is all of these get put on our YouTube channel so that you can go and find them there. But we have links to all of them directly as well. So, yeah. So the good news of Zoom is it's easier to reach more people, right? That is a good thing, and providing us a little better, easy way to help you all out. So thank you all so much for taking the time to learn. If you are a new member, welcome. You are part of an amazing group of women and men, of people of all genders and ages working together. Please stay with us.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.